up. Pull up.
On January 29, 2025, around 5:55 p.m., American Airlines Flight 5342 departed from Wichita Dwight D. Eisenhower National Airport in Kansas. It was a routine 2.5-hour flight. Its destination, Reagan National Airport in Washington, DC. But Reagan National Airport is comparatively more complex to navigate than other airports. Reason being, its close proximity to important American political and military infrastructure. Here is the Pentagon, the U.S. Capitol, the White House, all in a few miles distance from the airport. There are a lot of restrictions on where you are allowed to fly and what kind of approaches you can take, for both the commercial and military flights. There is a restricted in and out corridor for flights to traverse, which follows the Potomac River. On this day, American Airline Flight 5342 was originally to approach and to land on runway 1, but at 8:43:06 p.m., 5 minutes before crash, the flight crew and the tower had discussions, and the landing was switched to runway 33 instead. This meant the landing approach is now changed. Now, after passing Woodrow Wilson Bridge, they eventually have to make their final approach turning towards Potomac River and start preparations to land on runway 33. As mentioned earlier, this is a common shared airspace used by both civil and military aircrafts, and thus, a military Black Hawk helicopter, PAT-25, was on its training mission and was following its designated path along the Potomac. But there are a few additional rules to conduct flight operations in this air corridor. For military helicopters, there is flying ceiling limit of 200 feet, and commercial flights fly above 300 feet, so there is always a clearance of 100 feet or more. But initial reports shows that PAT-25 might be flying above its threshold limit, for reasons unknown. This will be more clear once the investigation completes, and the reports are published by NTSB. Also, the Black Hawk was flying under Visual Flight Rules, or VFR, which means it is required to be visually aware of any surrounding aircraft. On the other hand, American Airlines jet was flying under Instrument Flight Rules, IFR, which has the priority over all VFR flights. That means Black Hawk should have always let the commercial flights to pass through first with priority. On top, the transponders works on different frequencies for military versus civil flights. Generally, civil aircrafts uses VHF, or very high frequency, as compared to military, which uses ultra-high frequency. This may very well add up to the complexity of the investigation. That is, whether the flying crew of both these planes were even aware of each other's presence. Therefore, at 8:46 p.m., Tower informed PAT-25 about American Airlines' approach. At 8:47:39, Tower asked PAT-25 Black Hawk helicopter if CRJ was in sight, to which they acknowledged. They did. But it's quite possible that PAT-25 might have mistakenly identified a different aircraft, possibly a departing flight from the same airport. At 8:47:42, Tower asks PAT-25 to pass behind the CRJ. At this time, American Airlines jet was around 2,600 feet, or approximately 800 meters short of the runway 33, at a height of around 300 feet or 100 meters. But at 8:48 p.m., PAT-25 collided with approaching jet. As a result of this collision, the passenger plane broke into multiple pieces, the Black Hawk itself broke apart, and both of them fell into the Potomac River. There were 64 people on board American flight, 60 passengers, 2 crew members, and 2 pilots. PAT-25 had a crew of 3 military personnels. No one survived on either planes. This incident is still being investigated, and more information is bound to be known once the actual report comes from investigating agency.